Welcome to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast with John Kim and Noelle Cordeaux. If you're inspired to begin your own life coaching practice or just want to learn a little bit more about what it's all about, visit JRNI.co. That's JRNI.co for more information. Your adventure awaits.
In this episode, we're going to talk about why coach training is so valuable and how to actually use this stuff. Noelle Cordeaux.
Hi, John. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm actually really excited for today's session because the technique that we're going to use is one of my absolute favorites.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear about it.
Coaching is a discipline that flows really kind of intuitively, verbally, and a lot of people ask me all the time, why is coach training necessary? And the answer is that just like any other skill, that once you develop it, it flows easily and intuitively. You're kind of rickety in the beginning,
Right.
And having different techniques, underpinnings, processes, understanding of how this stuff works neurobiologically, neurolinguistically, sets you up for success.
Yeah, I love the idea of seeing life coaching as a craft. I think many people don't see it as a craft.
It is very much a craft, and it has strong roots that go back to Socrates with Socratic questioning,
Right.
and then all of the tenets of mindfulness. And then sports psychology strongly informs coaching, as does goal setting theory, leadership theory, positive psychology, and one of the more famous techniques called appreciative inquiry, which is what we're going to go over today.
Yes. So what is appreciative inquiry?
Appreciative inquiry is just like what it says. You are asking folks questions about their life and about what they'd like to do with their time in a way that draws on and pulls out the positive.
So wait, let me ask you this. What's the difference between appreciative inquiry and positive psychology? It sounds like they're similar.
So positive psychology is the actual science behind how your brain and body works. When you induce positive emotions, when you set plans for the future, it looks at what happens to the human as a specimen.
Right.
Appreciative inquiry is a technique for a coach to use in order to help someone do that.
So you want to do an example? So do you want to do some appreciative inquiring on me?
Sure.
All right.
We can do that. But first, let's set up the technique, because appreciative inquiry is based on a lot of different theories and principles.
Right.
And, just like any other art or science, the theories and principles are really interesting. Like one of them is called the poetic principle. And that's the concept that, like a poet, you can rewrite your story at any time.
Yes. It reminds me
So
of narrative.
Yes, very
Yes.
much so. And so that's the theory that underlines the action. So building on the poetic principle, building on social construction, that social construction theory lays out that pretty much everyone is born with a box on their head. And that box represents the world as they see it and where they think they can go and what they think they can do based on their family of origin and based on where they grew up in the world. And what we know in coaching is that your capacity is actually limitless. And so the job of a coach is to remove the box from somebody's head and then hold their hand while they see for the first time that life is limitless.
How do you remove the box? How do you convince someone that there is no ceiling? And how do you help someone, rewrite their story?
that's where these techniques come in.
Mm,
Because when you're first starting out as a coach, that's a really scary question, right?
yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do that? And coaches aren't supposed to be telling people what to do. They're supposed to be leading them to their own conclusions.
Yes.
And so there's a technique called the 5D cycle, or the 5Ds. And the 5Ds stand for a process that you work someone through. You define, you discover, you dream, you design, and then you move with action steps to fill your destiny.
Mm, I love that. I love the process in that. I love you could actually visually see the progression with the 5Ds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And we can do it. We can do a quick one now to explain how this works. But, when you're in coach training and you get the nuance, like, okay, this is social construction theory, this is the poetic principle. How do you pull it all together? Here's a technique. And
Right.
then when you sit with someone, you have the technique in front of you to work you through the paces until it becomes intuitive for you, just like riding a bicycle.
Yeah, and then I think as you practice the technique, you also start to make it your own, right? So you use your own language. I think it's a great kind of jumping off point. Or no? Do you disagree?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a great jumping off point, and you modify it and you make it your own as you go. And not every technique works for every coach, and not every technique works for every client.
Yes.
And so as you go, yeah, it's just true. And so as you go through this process of becoming, coaches typically end up with, I'd say, between 5 and 10 techniques that they have in their toolbox that they go to every single time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it doesn't make you less of a coach. It doesn't make you a one-trick pony. You just get better at your technique. So, for example, Bruce Lee says he's more afraid of the guy that's done one kick 10,000 times instead of someone who knows 10,000 kicks. And
Hmm.
I think it's the same thing. I think you have your, five or six techniques that you're really confident in, and it's okay that you don't have to know 100 techniques. Actually, you probably shouldn't.
No, you probably shouldn't. It would get confusing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it would get confusing for the client. So this technique, when you're using appreciative inquiry, it's important to set up with the client ahead of time that this is what you're doing. A little
Mm,
bit about appreciative inquiry, that it's a strengths-based approach to change. And when we're looking at this, as a young coach, it's super important to know that not everybody is ready, willing, or able to go with a strengths-based approach to change.
right.
It's a special kind of client that's really ready to go for it.
How would you know if someone's not? Is it just basically their resistance in the room?
It's their resistance, and also you want to notice how much your client wants to continue to talk about their problems and to talk about their pain.
Right.
If your client is consistently redirecting to problems and pain, that's a signal that they need to process this stuff and that they're just really not ready to look at the positive. They're not ready to flip to the endocrine system. There's more foundational work to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And the way to handle that is you express empathy to your client. And then after a reasonable amount of time, you have to say, hey, I'm noticing that you really are using our time to talk about your past and to talk about your current pain and to replay the problems, which is valid.
Right.
But this kind of work is typically what you do with a therapist or a counselor, and you might be better served with another discipline.
Mm, yes, I love that. Absolutely. I think people who are maybe struggling with depression or other things where they're just not in a space to see the positive and practice this. Uh, I think it's responsible after working with a client for a certain amount of time to then say maybe life coach, you're not ready to be life coach yet. Maybe you do need therapy.
100%. And because the purpose of life coaching is to accomplish specific and measurable goals.
Yeah,
And if someone is in a place where they are not done processing their pain, they're not ready to move on to tackling specific and measurable goals. Coaching and therapy lie on a continuum. And both are super important processes. One just happens to follow the other.
sure. And also, as a life coach, it's your responsibility to pass the baton if it's not in your scope of practice, and then right behind that, to not put pressure on yourself or to see that you have, failed or something. They're just two different things.
There's two completely separate disciplines, two completely different sciences, two completely different approaches.
Right.
100%. All right, you want to play with this technique?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. All right. I love these because I get to coach John every week. It's fun.
Well,
All right.
I may need more therapy than life coaching, but let's give it a shot.
That's okay. I wear both hats. We can get into it.
All right.
All right. So let's start with defining. This is step one in the 5D process. Now, for our listeners at home, if I were working with a client, I would typically work somebody through this process over a period of weeks or months. So John is going to have the laser version.
Yes.
So when we're defining, it's an agreement. This is part of the coaching conversation, is setting up the agreement that everybody is clear what you would like to work on, that we're going to use the 5D strength process. John, do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Awesome. So next up, we're going to go on to discover. Discover. So can you give me some positive examples of outcomes that you would like to achieve, or just one outcome that you would like to achieve?
Okay, let me think of a situation. I'm just thinking of something that's just current and probably happening today. An outcome would be to feel good about myself.
To feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now coaches at home, young coaches, that's a pretty broad statement
Yes.
that John just made, to feel good about himself. So I need a hell of a lot more information.
Okay.
So John,
yeah, let me sorry, I forgot to tell you the
specifically
the event that's causing anxiety. Okay, so I have to right after this, I'm going in to do the last workout of the CrossFit Open, and I'm just doing it for fun. I don't compete or anything anymore. But me and my friend Andy have a little competition thing going, and it's bringing me a lot of anxiety because I haven't CrossFitted in months, and it's a grueling workout. And so the goal after that is to actually just feel good about myself and not put pressure on myself or feel that I have failed or that I'm not as good. All that stuff that comes with competing.
Now, I'm going to take off my coaching hat for a moment, and just as an aside, Andy seems to put you in a lot of precarious environments where your feelings of security in the world are in jeopardy.
We do it
Just
back
saying.
we do it back and forth. That's how we love each other. But it's all in good fun. So
Okay.
it is all in good fun, but it's my own internal stuff where, even though it is all in good fun, me putting extra pressure on myself when it doesn't need to be there, when we're just fooling around.
So, okay, so let's drill down to what's really going on here so we can get to the core thing you want to achieve. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like there might be some old stuff left over from when
Yes.
you used to compete in the CrossFit Open.
Yes.
And that the idea of just doing this for fun, there's some blockers
Yes, it's
towards
hard.
doing that.
Exactly. It's hard being quote unquote an ex-athlete and then doing it for fun and then exposing scores and then putting pressure on myself to be better and then other people thinking that I'm not as good anymore. That kind of stuff.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So here's where the technique gets really cool. So the way you use this technique is you ask your client, and I'm going to ask John, let's discover and let's go back and look at a time in your life where you were able to solve this problem in a different area of your life.
Mm. Oh man, that's a tough question. Solve this problem. Okay. As a writer,
When there was something as a
yes,
writer.
yeah, yeah. So,
Awesome.
as a screenwriter, I feel like I have, or I once felt like I failed, and so when I started blogging, I no longer considered myself a writer. I didn't consider blogging as like real writing, right? And so that's another time in my life where I feel like, like the ex writer, or the writer that failed, or the writer that didn't make it.
So what did you experience when you started blogging in a pleasurable way?
Um, I started to fall in love with writing again. I mean, it took a while, because it wasn't something I was doing for money, and it wasn't something that I was doing. I didn't stamp that as a career, right? I wasn't.
What did it
It just ended up kind of being one.
So what I'm doing here now, guys, is I'm going to drill down on the experience of falling in love with writing. John, what
Mm-hmm.
is it like to fall in love with writing?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. I love it. Um, it's to write for yourself and no one else. It's
Mm,
to express your truth. It's to practice creativity. I think one of the greatest joys of life. It's to talk about your feelings. It's to not be invisible.
how do you feel when you're able to do that?
I feel alive. I feel amazing. I feel whole. I feel sometimes I go into flow states, almost like I'm possessed. I feel good about myself.
All right. So guys, this is a classic example of the discovery process where we're using appreciative inquiry to go back in time to John's life and pull forward an example of when he was able to accomplish the very thing that he wants to accomplish now and remind him, number one, that he's capable of it, and then number two, that you feel alive, engaged, whole, capable. What else?
Good about myself. Good
Good
about,
about yourself.
yeah, good
All
about
right,
being me.
cool.
Yeah.
So now let's pull the threads forward to the future.
Hmm.
Um, when you're working out, do you ever experience that today?
Yes, but I have to set the intention to do it, and I have to go into it reminding myself to search for those experiences, not chase a scoreboard.
And have you been able to get to that flow state?
Yes,
You are, so you are capable of it.
yes.
Cool, cool, cool. Now let's talk about your core values in this situation. Why is it important for you to um, have this experience and have it be fun?
Because that's the whole point of this. If it's not fun, then why am I doing it? And also, the fun makes it sustainable. And fitness is a huge part of my life that I practice and do every day, and it's important to me, and it ties into me feeling good about myself and my body. So I don't ever want to lose it.
Yeah. So, guys, what I'm doing now is I'm pressing down on core values because when you're in the discovery process, you want to spend a lot of time here, really getting into, as John said, the life-giving factors of the experience. So, to kind of mentally start tilling the soil of like, wow, like this is who I am. So, um, if you found a magic lamp and there were a genie in it, and you had to ask that genie what she would like your outcome to be today, what would it look like?
The outcome would be, so I'm closing my eyes and visualizing, go in, do the workout, and in the workout, go on my little hero's journey, slay my dragons, have a good time, and leave uh, feeling like I had a great workout and that it was fun, and uh, that I'm okay. Like I did good, and I'm not labeling myself or judging myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
And then
I'm going to
putting it
deviate
into
from
Andy's face. Just kidding. Sorry, go ahead.
input. Well, I mean, okay. I mean, I feel like Andy's a big part of the problem here, John.
Yeah,
I have to say.
maybe the problem is I just
Like,
need a new friend.
and I mean, or at least one with like less grievous activities. Um, so so if I were coaching John on this, I'd want to go back and poke around a little bit, in what he said about failure and try to get a good reframe going there. We don't have time to do that today,
Right.
but the purpose of the questions that I just gave him leading into the discovery phase are to strengthen the energy and positive self-perception through the retelling of positive experiences. And then the future visualization of those experiences can cement it also.
Yes.
You want to spend as much time as possible here.
Yeah, and
So the
oh,
next,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
No. I didn't know that you're not done. I want you to finish first, and then no, it's good.
hmm I was going to move on to the next phase, which is dreaming,
Mm-hmm.
which is the what might be.
Ooh.
What might be. So this is taking this concept of, your genie vision and saying, how would it change your life to have this be your lived experience where you're able to go into spaces and access events and have fun without having emotional turmoil around constructs of self-worth.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and what I would love to take out of this is if I could do it in the gym, then hopefully I could do it with other things. So, I don't know, meetings, other areas of my life where I feel pressure or anxiety or labels I put on myself, to use the same process that we're using now in other situations that are similar to this, and so I could come out the other end with a good experience and again liking myself.
John, you set this up perfectly for me. So I need to point out that you have already proved to yourself you can do this because you did it with writing.
Yes. So
And so
I
there's
right.
no reason to believe that you can't replicate the process.
Yeah. And that's so powerful. And guys, if you're listening to this, you should listen to it a couple more times because if you can see the process, for me, what was really powerful was when Noelle compared this to writing. So taking another chapter of my life and putting it side by side, and then because I was familiar with that process, overlaying that with this kind of simple Saturday workout.
Yep.
It was really helpful
Yep.
because then it made me believe because I've already been there in a different way.
Oh, we're not done yet. Now we're in
Oh,
phase 4, which is design. Oh,
okay.
yeah. So looking back at writing, what did you, what was a habit, a procedure, a system, something that you did that you can literally use today?
Going into it with the doing it for me and no one else.
Okay. Get more into that. What does that feel like? What does that look like? What is the action step here? How are you going to do that?
So with writing, it's actually sitting down and writing for me. So with this workout, it would be going into it, having a conversation with myself and not worrying about, the clock and people watching and all that, but just getting very present, actually, mindful and going through the process and enjoying it. And even when it gets hard, reminding myself that this is why you love it, connecting with my body.
And maybe make Andy leave the room, connecting with
Yeah.
your body and eat a mask or leave the room. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
get rid of the problem.
Yeah, and by the way,
So
I
we just
instigated the
designed.
whole thing. It's not. I'm the
Oh, did
instigator here.
you?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
here I am blaming him.
I know, I know. That's why I'm being protective of my friend now.
Okay. So where we looked at the process to get an action step. Did I lose you, John?
Yep. What was the question?
Oh, you're there. Oh no, I just said that was the design phase where
Right.
we looked at the process of writing to get the action step for
Right. Right.
today. And then the final step in this is just to destiny piece of the 5 Ds.
Okay, wait, can you repeat that? Because I think we lost you.
So,
Repeat
yeah.
the final
Yeah,
step.
so destiny is the final step,
Oh,
which
got
is
it.
the rinse and repeat process.
Right.
Yeah. So we had the action step, and now you have to execute it and repeat it because, as you told us, you'd like to use this process in other aspects of your life.
Right. Got it. That was great.
Yeah.
That was great, and it was helpful.
And that's how
And
it's done.
yeah, and guys, listen, that's also just one way. It's one door in, and also if I was to approach this, I would probably follow the same kind of process, but with my own words, and who knows, where I would go with it, and it's okay. But thank you for showing us one example of how to life coach someone. That was great.
Totally. Awesome. Have fun today. Let us know how it goes.
I will. And it's. I just picked that. I don't want people to think that that's like this looming thing that I have tons of anxiety about. I just pulled that out of the hat because it's happening like in an hour. But that was really helpful, and I'm going to remind myself to um, connect to me and really have fun with it, and compare it to the other chapter of my story. So thank you.
Awesome. Talk
Awesome.
to you next time,
All
bud.
right. Be well.